And even the Toronto Star goes after him too. You know, they had a comic on Thursday or something about him because it was a yoga studio and they have touching cards. So just in case, you know, they put a card next to your ass to say, you know, feel me or not. So nobody gets in trouble. So they make a joke about him that he's running a yoga studio when he says it's okay because we got these touch cards to know if it's okay or not. So it's just despicable, really, what they do, how they do it, that these people do the character assassinations to take out anybody who could be a threat to their various parts of crooked law. And then when Ford gets in, one of the first things he does is we got this thing in Ontario, and a lot of communities have it, where you have like a review committee, an investigatory body to look into the police use of force or just plain out malfeasance. In Ontario, we call it the SIU. So about the only thing I could ever agree maybe with Kathleen Wynne doing something was to bring in a law to give them more powers. I think they were even going to allow police chiefs to suspend crooks. Like, you're off duty, right? You're going to the library to look at little children in the washroom or something, and you get caught. You're suspended with pay as a cop. There ain't no other job's going to do that. You're not even going to have a job. So why do they get the golden handshake here that you're one of them? So as long as you don't turn in the political Politburo is always going to look after you. So Ford just throws that out the window. It was a proclaimed law. There's even a big legality about that. It's already been proclaimed by the Lieutenant Governor General. It's the law now. Just on his own initiative to rule by fiat, to say, well, I don't like that law. No, you got to pass another act of parliament, I would think, to take that out. And that would just be a rubber stamp anyway, because he's got a majority government. But there's been many badasses in the police, and they're not held to account while they're suspended with pay. Or they operate like a Colombian death squad, blow somebody away. Their family can never find out what happened. They're not required to say anything or do anything to anybody, the news, the press. If it wasn't for the fact maybe there's a third party there with a camera or to be a witness, no one's ever going to know. The bullets fly, somebody dies, and they make it up later. And you got to live with that. Well, that's just wrong. And that was one good piece of legislation that should have survived. There's other stuff that her sex education program and bullshit. That's important to get out because it's just, as some people have told me, just grooming kids for the pedophile club, who pretty much run the world anyway. And then I love libtards trying to solve problems. There's probably lots of good videos about monkeys solving problems and actually succeeding. But we send people to school as public schools. We pay for it. And some of the most basic, fundamental things that you learn in school, they can't apply to life. And everybody's walking around, even without smoking dope, just in a daze. Like, I don't know what to do. I can't figure it out. I don't know what to do. I can't figure it out. And we've had these problems on other issues, and they were never solved. They turned into a crime problem because organized crime takes them over. And then it dawned on me, because I took economics in university, about the laws of supply and demand. You can't ban anything, even though we should really change the C to a B in Canada and call it Banada, because that seems to be the only solution anyone ever has to a problem, is ban it, ban it, ban this, ban that, ban this, ban that, ban this, ban that. Everything's banned. So we thought Banada's the perfect name for our country. Ban everything. You just have to pass one law. Everything is banned. And you'll wake up tomorrow in your drug-induced coma, and you'll know the world is a good place. See, the reason the world's oldest profession was the world's oldest profession is because you can't ban it. Defies the law of supply and demand. Prohibition didn't work for a reason. They banned liquor. Well, you can't. The only thing you do is move the point of intersection on the supply and demand curve. You can't uninvent something that's been invented. It exists. So it goes into the underground economy, and it still exists, and the supply and demand curves still have to intersect. So even if you summarily torture and execute as a punishment, somebody's going to come up and go, wow, look how high that is. I could get $10 million just for one transaction. And the odds are maybe like 0.5% I'm going to get caught. And I really don't give a shit about living anyway, so I'll do it. That's how it works. So now they're going on, oh, we got a gun problem. No, we don't. We have a drug problem because drugs are banned. And we're handling it in a criminal manner, a health problem. So we're doing the wrong thing and expecting it to work out. Well, it's not. You can't ban anything against the law of supply and demand. It's all you do is open up the floodgates to organized crime to sell everything. And if you was a drug dealer and I was a drug dealer and we had a disagreement, I can't sue him and take him to court. I can't go to the government and say, you know, I was checking out his heroin supply and it's not pure. He's advertising 100 pure and it's only 50. I can't go to a review board to say, well, you know, take away his license because it's not good shit. There's only one way to handle it. You got the court of semi-automatic. That's your court. You gun the sucker down and guess what? You won the case. And then his people do that to you and back and forth and back and forth. And guess what? You're in the middle of a drug war, which is what we're having here. And everybody's got a million solutions for the symptoms. The violence is a symptom of the disease. So it's like big pharma, right? They got a million to sell you to treat your symptoms, but they don't want to cure the disease because that puts them out of business. Well, why does the government not want to put the drug dealers out of business? Well, probably because they're a criminal enterprise too, and it helps that cash flow to paradise. And you don't even need special papers or anything like that. It just seems to find its way there on its own, and everybody just does the Trudeau shrug. It's Papa Trudeau. You know, I don't know. It's not me. I'm an honorable man. I swore my oath to the Queen. But that's why we got all this gun violence. So if we did what Portugal did, and we turned it into a health problem, so everything's decriminalized, and even given away for close to gratis, so that you can get therapy and medical aid and treatment, then there's a hope you can get them off this stuff before they kill themselves. But the big thing is, you take it out of the hands of organized crime. They got nothing to sell. You move that supply and demand curve. Yeah, we're giving it away. What are you going to sell? Tacos, deliver pizzas with your BMWs and your guns? It's over, baby. You're out of business. Your business model collapses because you can't compete. You got to find something else to do. And that's why crime dropped in Portugal 70% when they realized that. Because they had the cojones, the Prime Minister of Portugal at the time, who said, I want a solution. I'm not interested in the bullshit. I'm not interested in your little ivory castles or whatever delusional world you think you live in with cops and robbers or whatever. I want it solved. What's the answer? That was the answer. Somebody used a brain. There's another thing that you learn in school that everybody forgets about. I guess nobody even talks about it after that day of class is over. But it's called, you know, the path of least resistance. Remember that one? So with regulations and laws, what do you make? You make the path of the greatest resistance. And everybody thinks, well, I'm going to be safe that way, right? So we'll pass all these laws. We'll bring out stuff like what maybe in the old days used to be the New York City phone book with laws and regulations, right? You go through all that and you get to the end of it and you'll get a license or permission to do something. And then you walk into the back alley and there's a guy standing there with a raincoat and he goes, what do you want? You want this or you want that? But cash, man. You give me the cash, you got it. That's the path of least resistance. So where does it flow? It flows to him. It doesn't flow to that regulatory body that's trying to control everything. That's just a delusion in the mind of the people who are power and control freaks. That they got it all. that they have some kind of power over you. No, they don't. Because you're going to go in the laneway and you're going to meet the most disreputable characters in the world, and they're going to give guns to people who are crazed out on drugs anyway. Because it's just part of their business model. And the more regulations you put up against the guns, the higher the price goes. So maybe before, it was like you go to a lot of places, you get like a bonus item. Well, you buy $10,000 worth of smack from me and you get a free pistol. Oh, but now those laws are so thick. I don't know. Okay, I'll give it to you for $1,000. So you buy $10,000 worth of drugs, $1,000, and you get your pistol. So you're just going to make that graph react to the laws and regulations because nobody even understands the basics. And then the people who don't understand the basics are running the economy. There's only one thing you do. You go to the bankster and you just say, more. I want more. Because they can take it out of your pocket as a taxpayer. And then there was a day a long time ago when you didn't pay income tax. And that was always my big question. How did we live? Oh, that's right. We had central banks that created their own money supplies and stuff like that. Like Argentina, as I was talking about recently in a home recording. They got one of those banks. And they're getting a head noogie from all the central banksters. And that's why Argentina's getting the screw job they're getting. That they've got to hyperinflate. There's nothing wrong with the system they have. It's just they're waging economic warfare on them. And while they're waging economic warfare on them, they can't react. And their currency goes down the drain. Completely. There's a very simple solution to that too. Because this is supposed to be like to help developing nations. It's supposed to be like a handout, right? So it's not like you go to, you're walking down the street, a homeless guy comes up to you and you go, can I have some money, man? I need to get a meal. You give him the money, he goes gets his meal. You don't come out with a big contract to say, okay, I'm with the IMF and we're going to get you a burger and some fries. And you sign this document here that you're going to pay us back, the $5 for the burger and the fries plus 20% interest. Compounded, weekly or monthly or annually or whatever. Well, he's never going to be able to afford to pay it back because he didn't even have the money to buy the burger in the first place. So that's what they do to these countries. They get them into debt. It's just like giving the addict your first fix. So you always got to come back. So what they got to do is give this loan out in US dollars, as they do. That's fine. You take it back in their currency. And their currency will remain stable because paying back the loan in their currency creates a demand for their currency. Where if they have to pay it back in US dollars, the demand for their currency just goes off a cliff because they have to sell their currency to buy US dollars. And you just create that, endless slide down the slope that you can never recover from. Because their currency keeps going down and down and down and down, and people short sell it and kick them in the teeth and all the rest of this thing all the way down the line. But if you really want to do them a hand and make the world economy work, that's the way you do it. You're still going to get back what you paid for because their currency won't collapse. So you'll get back what you want. It's just going to be in another currency, and it creates a demand for it. It survives. And there's a lot of other countries that are starting to feel the grip. Turkey was one I just read about. They're starting to feel their grip is starting to slide, their lira. Although that's part of maybe the karma wave for going to start wars in Syria and the Middle East. It's not doing too well for them. Venezuela's taken a good beating, of course. The Chinese currency, the yuan, has slipped a little bit with, maybe some of the trade issues coming along. It's nasty business out there. Just nasty, nasty business. And then, there was a surprise meeting. Didn't really get covered, too greatly along the line. Let me see here. I can find this. These things disappear off my website when they're controversial for some reason, just like that. It's gone again, but we've already covered that part. I don't know if it'll recover. I put something up about Comrade Trudeau, and it disappears. Okay, our page is refreshed. It's back again. So let's go and see this man here. Stephen Harper had a meeting on Monday at the White House. And you're going like, I thought he was a has-been. Well, he was a Bilderberger. Once you're a Bilderberger and a committed globalist building the world super government, you're never out of business. You're just in the background, part of the shadow government. And he's there. Well, like, well, what are they talking about? Okay, well, we could be going there to talk about trade, right? Because we got some trade issues with the United States and whatever. But then as you read the article, the Canadian government didn't know anything about it. It's news to them. So a former prime minister goes to Washington to see the president, and the ambassador in Washington doesn't know anything about it. The Canadian government, foreign affairs, they know nothing about it. Well, what's he doing there? Well, if I had to take a guess, using logic, and looking at some of the pictures of previous meetings. So in this meeting, when Trudeau meets Trump, he's got this sanctimonious grin on his face, just like, I own you, baby. There's nothing you can do to me. Until he finds an old newspaper article about some little bit of groping. And then when he meets his love child, Mr. Obama, and after the election, you know, there was a lot of meetings with the various libtards, Democrats, Canadians, and it's like Canada was a front, like it was in the Civil War, the U.S. Civil War. Agents from the Confederacy were in Canada doing a lot of stuff in Montreal. You know, they're meeting in Montreal, and they're talking about, you know, what? Doing what people say all over the place about Donald, taking him out. So when Donald talks about this trade meeting, starts saying, well, he stabbed me in the back. I don't think that was about trade. Anybody who goes into any kind of negotiations that are intense has a position, and they have to represent the people that they have a position for. I've done negotiations in union environments. So I got to stick by the guys they want, even though it's like a wish from Santa Claus. And probably beyond any concept of any employer to give you that. Like there were times when you tallied up the memberships stuff, they're looking for like a 5, 6, 700% wage increase. And well, yeah, right. You know, and those are in the days of wage and price controls yet too. So you got 5%. You divvy it up any way you want. You got 5%. And that's all there is. But, so, you know, you're going to stick to your guns, to your membership, and say what you want. Anybody who's negotiating understands that. And the same with management. They're going to do the same thing, too. They're going to stick to their guns and toe their lines about what's going on. No problem. You just understand that. So what did he say that got picked up by the microphone cameras around Air Force One? I think it was probably a little more about, we're going to take that sucker out. Because there was that missile event after he left Quebec. And then in this one where they talk on CNN about, you know, Kudlow's talking about the stab in the back. You see in the background, those two black towers and the smoke coming out and the White House. It almost looks like, you know, they got some kind of like 9/11 strategy going on here. And then, you know, Trump doesn't pull his punches. His face is revealing everything there, too. Trudeau's holding out his hand. That's like, you know, maybe you were in court meeting the guy who ran down your child or something, and he goes, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. All forgiveness, buddy. Shake my hand. He wants to spit in his hand. It's written all over his face. And then when you look at the twilight language in the back, there you got your 9 and you got your 11. 9/11. And then X. It's the 22nd letter of the alphabet. So you get 33 degrees of Freemasonry is kind of encoded and hidden in the picture. So what does that tell us? What's the stab in the back? What if he's going to be the head of the new military junta that runs Canada after they take that son of a bitch out? And we don't have like the 2-term things like Americans got where it's 2 terms, that's it. You can't go back. You know, they may even be grooming him for the next election. Put him back in power, show pictures of girls' butts, and Trudeau's hands attached, and he's gone. He is gone. Another funny Canada is, you know, it kind of blew me away, was looking at a newspaper going under my nose about the big scandal we had in the Haitian embassy. And we're like, okay. Clinton Foundation? No, just flat out bribes and corruption and stuff like that, where employees hired by the Canadian government were involved in about $1.7 million worth of malfeasance with contracts and stuff like that. It took them a couple of years to figure that out because they're slow. You know, they're from Canada, eh? And when they did, they fired a lot of these people. One of them came to Canada looking to be a refugee, and, you know, one of the Canadian embassy people was fired. A couple were disciplined. Going, you stupid! It's not that you were doing bad contracts and stealing, it's that you got caught. You stupid stalker! Well, I don't know if Trudeau was a stalker. But, you know, it's just nasty business. All the way along the line. And then, something for, just like a funny one. There was another funny one there. Like, there was a big harangue a while ago where a TTC fare instructor ran into some guy on a streetcar. And, he was just without a fare. And things got a little rough. He asked for proof of fare, and a fight started, and he took the guy down, and he got arrested. The police came. He's cuffed. He's taken away, and then they try to make out some kind of thing. Well, it's racism. So they review all the videos 6 ways from Sunday because they're looking for an angle to get this guy. Because you stepped in the PC doo-doo bucket. Ooh, there's no worse smell than the PC doo-doo bucket. So they trained all these guys very, very thoroughly, and they found out he didn't do anything wrong. The other guy took a swing at him, and it's like, well, lights out time. You're down on the ground, you get cuffed, you get hauled away. Everything was Marcus of Queensberry rules. Except for one thing. He smiled. Can you believe it? He smiled. Ooh, bastard. The guy smiled. So you take the guy down, who knows, you're pretty much fighting for your life. I mean, anytime you get in a street fight, it's no picnic, So you triumphed, you're the victor, and I guess if you're in any sport, you raise your hand and scream. And if you're at war, maybe you got a severed head in your hand and, you won, you're the victor. Okay, he smiled. What a terrible thing. If you're in the States, it was, well, we just tasered him another 20 times and then recharged it and did it 20 more. Because we don't like loud noises from the gun going off. He smiled. I thought that was hilarious. But that's Canada. And it's probably not any better in the United States. Like, how many things they had there go wrong. So some of the good news is Americans bought more guns. They own more guns than the police and the military combined. I think one was a factor. They got more guns than the military by a factor of 4 to 1, and the police by like 10 to 1 or something like that. And, wow, man. So, they take their liberty seriously down there. Really seriously. And that's about the only thing to keep the wolf away from the door. Because what happens when the wolf comes to the door? That's, another factor that they don't teach us too much in school. But I came across this in the Daily Mail. And see, there we go. My disappearing posts. I don't know if I can get that back. Don't know how they disappear or why, but there we go. So this is Russia, 1921. And it looks like the Hillary Clinton spirit cooking food fest, uncensored. So because you have this beautiful socialist system, and look how pretty these people are. What do you do? So I sell human body parts for food because everybody's starving to death. And it was a mass starvation there because food is a weapon to these people. And I guess, well, it's no use letting a protein burger or two get away if you're that starving. And, here's your family, just the bloated bellies, emaciated people. They were all over the place in that. And then this is later in the Ukrainian starvation program, but it's still the same government, the USSR. And this guy's pretty chubby. But you notice he's holding something. He's got that rifle. You want food? You die now. You don't have to wait for starvation. We'll just shoot you down. So the state has the power. And what do they do with that power? They starve you. Use food as a weapon. And there's nothing you can do about it because you're unarmed and helpless. And they got all the grain stored away there and everything's fine for them. But that's the whole concept of why the Second Amendment's in there. It's nothing to do with hunting or target shooting or gun collecting or anything like that. It's like Chairman Mao said, power grows out of the barrel of a gun. So who's going to have the power? Comrade Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Mao Zedong, Hirohito, or some lesser devils through the 22nd or 21st and 20th centuries. Pinochet, Idi Amin Dada. Who's going to have the power? That's what you got to decide. And yeah, there's screw-ups along the way because the power is spread out among a broad mass, and some of them aren't exactly got all their rocks in their head. But the only other way is when the state has the power. You have that, Power corrupts absolutely all the time. And they use that power in a negative way to control you. And if Joe in Montgomery is correct about the fact that by the time we figure out what's happened to us, we're going to be enslaved, it don't look too good for us. Because this is something my colleague in arms, Tim, sent me that just blew me away. It's a really long article. I haven't had a time to go through it yet. But in the Reader's Digest version, it's very, very clear and open-minded here. Google is building the future city in Toronto, the test city, the completely internet up city. They're going to do it in a dilapidated park near the docks to get it started, but everything will be monitored and controlled with that wonderful thing I was telling you about last time, that phone of yours. You fart, the phone's going to know it. And a delivery truck from Amazon is going to speed to your door with air freshener before the smell can even die. And that's what it's going to be. The complete, total Orwellian state is being manufactured right here in this town right now. So it's like I told Joan when I emailed this out to a lot of people, it's the same thing. You know, the race is on. Are you going to figure it out? Or is it going to happen to you? And by and large, it's probably going to happen to you. I don't think people are bright enough to figure it out because we have this, fantasy world that we live in. And anybody who breaks your bubble in a fantasy becomes your enemy. That was a lady we were affiliated with here at ThatChannel ages ago who was being defrauded. And I told her, I said, this guy's taking it to cleaners. Oh, no. No. But see, he was so smart. He knew exactly what buttons to push. What's your deepest desire and need? The good fraud artists are like that, eh? And he's got you. So he knows what your vice is and that you'll do anything to achieve that. For some people, it could be chocolate, something very simple maybe. For other people, it could be narcotics or gambling. But for her, it was money, that you get lots of money. So to give away what little bit of money you got to get a lot of money later is a good deal. So by the time she figured it out, she lost her life savings. And then I'm the bad guy because I broke the bubble of the fantasy. And then you walk away scratching your head going, what the hell's wrong with this picture? But that's the way it works. So when we get to this stage where everything is controlled by, the computer and every word you say, every breath you take, because I don't have an iPhone. I was walking with somebody that did. And it's not my phone. So they must use voice recognition. We're just talking about, oh, wow, wouldn't it be great to be retired? Just one of those little fantasy dreams about, oh, yeah, you don't have to get up in the morning, put up with all the bullshit or this or that. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Then I go to my emails. I'm looking at the Daily Mail at a couple articles. And lo and behold, what's my junk advertising now? Retirement plans. Well, who the hell figured that out? They hear everything. It's another article I got buried in my laptop here too. Is like Google Chrome is collecting everything about you. Everything. And storing it away to give to these advertisers. And don't think any of the other ones aren't either. It's just these guys got outed right about now. But when you go to this city, I always line from Dante's Inferno. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Because there isn't going to be any hope in that Orwellian lockbox. With Comrade Google and everything, you are going to be totally, totally at their mercy, totally fried. And there's just no way about it. And I guess, you look at some of the market news too, witnessing the unusual stock market behavior, just like it was in 2008. Hint, 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 hint. So, everybody's in la-la land. Nobody's prepping or preparing to the extent that they used to be because you could just smell you were going off the cliff before. But the same pattern's happening again, and I guess people feel safe because, well, we got through that one. But investors are pulling their money out of the global stock funds at the fastest pace since the last financial crisis again. So, that's something to think about, right? And then as we were talking about, the violence there's people talking about, there's 31% of the people say the United States is headed for another civil war because you got the libtards against the Republicrats, and they're going to fight it out. If you know anything about the last Civil War, and I post that great video on my website with Ken Burns about the American Civil War, you look at the bloodbath that was, the absolute insanity of the killing that went on there, that anybody'd ever want to even suggest going down that trail again needs their head examined. But most of these thugs that are going out are like the George Soros kind that are hired, paid for to go out there and instigate shit and get it started. And so they're experts at color revolutions, as they called them. And, they're big on the West Coast, in Portland and such. Just walk away from stuff like that because they're just total rats trying to instigate, to be a catalyst to get some kind of fight going between the two things, to actually start some kind of conflict and maybe have it aspire to be a regime change. Like one of the articles I remember reading was about the corporate fascism in the United States. And that isn't a Republican thing. Fascism has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. It has everything to do with money. So when corporations pretty much write the laws for governments, and they do all over the world, that's how we get into all these free trade deals. Corporations go to the Politburo and just say, this is the way it is. There's a big think tank for the North American Union. I forget what it's called now. They were out west. They wrote the paper for the North American Union. And I believe their head was a top-notch Bilderberger or something like that. So the people we elect are just this vassals to this power elite. And we're stuck with them. And you got to do something about it. But it's not that. It's actually getting to a point where you turn off the propaganda and start digging for truth and manifesting that around the world. But Barack Obama met with a whole pile of big business people in venture capital land. So that's all part of it. Other parts of it are the shootings. They had the one in the newspaper to create the climate of fear, the coded messages on the wall, 888 on the address and such like that, to signify that, maybe it's a deeper, darker, satanic thing. The guy fits the bill as a Manchurian to a degree, because, he's just on another planet fighting over something that was on Facebook or whatever. Like, who cares? And what are you stalking women on Facebook anyway? Like, come to Canada, join the Liberal Party, run for Prime Minister. They'll vote for you. But then, when you go and you just dig a little bit deeper, Ramos's dad was employed by the National Security Agency. Oh, where's the Homer Simpson guy? What are the odds? Tu-Gun Cho, University of Virginia, right, was his sister, was with the Defense Intelligence Agency. Oh, what are the odds? Sarnev, the Boston bombing, one of his relatives was with one of these alphabet soup company agencies as well, as I recall. So it just seems like, normal people who walk down the street don't do stuff like that. But if you got affiliations with one of these spook agencies, like, even you go to the mass school shootings there, one of them, what was one of the first ones there, Hugh? What was the big one that was out west? Columbine. There we go. So one of the students' dad, who kind of was involved with kids, who wrote a script and did a film on this, was with the FBI. They wrote a film about a mass shooting at Columbine. And these guys filled out the role exactly. Well, how the hell does that happen? And then there's like the secret shadow parts of the alphabet soup companies. So I posted the episode of Homeland, I think season 6, and maybe it was episode 6, but it's the last Homeland they got up there that really gets into that, and how an FBI agent stumbles onto one of these companies. And he goes in undercover, finds out what it is, and that there's something, they got a big underground complex. It's like they're running the show. The FBI and the CIA don't know anything about it. So he tells the star of the show, and they're going to meet up, and then when she meets him, he's dead. They killed him. And then she's running for her life in the episode. So it's just like the movie The Parallax View. They did the same thing with the Parallax Corporation. That they got this big company that does all the terror on demand, and their access level is way higher than the people in uniform or the people you think are law enforcement agencies or intelligence agencies, and they're immune from anything and everything to do all that kind of harm and get away from it. And then these guys will write about it and make a big scare story so that you give away your rights and your freedoms to that power. Like I remember, many times that I got hacked by some of these alphabet soup private companies that work for the CIA or beyond the CIA that, they're trying to get into my computer, or they blew up my computer. And, the Chinese guys seem to be pretty fair about it. Like 90% of them were all in Beijing. But, it was the odd one was a Canadian company, or pardon me, an American company that was doing that kind of stuff. And, one of the last ones I saw, looking me down, I forget what it was called, but they just used same thing, like 3 letters. They're doing the same thing, too, from New England or something like that, looking into my background, because I leave traps on the internet to see when somebody's looking. And you're going like, well, what are they looking into my background for? Who the hell are these people? Nobody knows. That's why it's always nice to have a dog with big teeth, just in case. They'll figure it out. But the big protests are going on to get rid of ICE. Now they become the enemy. And you see the propaganda wagon just been like you got Orwell's 2 Minutes of Hate juicing up all over again. Well, okay, like if we were going to go after something, why don't we go after the Department of Homeland Security, which is kind of like a Gestapo that Bush dropped on our trail? Why are we going after the people who are, doing work at the border to check people out to make sure that, we don't have criminals coming in, or basically a migrant army to come in and be a subversive force? When that fighting gets started, that those demonstrators in Portland get it rolling, that they just pop out of nowhere, all armed to the teeth, and start gunning people down and do the regime change coup d'etat. So just take away the whole organization. It's absolutely brilliant. In Europe, they're banding together. Hungary and Austria are putting together, I guess, a fence. Wow, someone would put up a fence. But, go to almost any building anywhere that has any kind of security around it, take fence. It's a fence around the White House. Nobody complains about that. There's nothing wrong with people, being immigrants and migrating and going through whatever you got to do to get your green card to get in the door. The option's open. There's a set of rules, and they're checking the place out, or the people out, to make sure that it's okay for you to come in, that you're not going to take the place apart. Nothing wrong with that. Then you had that red hen incident where Huckabee Sanders should have went to Colonel Sanders. Maybe it's all part of the redneck family or something, but she goes to this restaurant and they take a vote that they're going to boot her out. But at the same time, the libtards are saying, well, you can't discriminate against anybody because they're different. Well, then, another good old saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It's got to work both ways. You're just there to eat. You're not there to divert people into something else or to hold a Klan meeting. So I can see if Huckabee Sanders, puts on the crooked cross, and, the guy comes in with the white sheet with the, like the Klan and stuff. Okay, well, you guys have gone too far. You're out of here. They're just coming in there to eat. It's a family function. It's got nothing to do with the government or business or something like that. It's stupid to come up with something, because it just generates more hate and bigotry. It's the last thing you need. And so maybe that's why they did it, because they wanted to generate hatred and bigotry. Maybe they were hoping some redneck somewhere would whop in there with a big gun and blow people away so they'd have something else to scream about. But that's why when you have these travails come upon you, you can't react with violence or things like that. You just got to, take the chill pill, and sometimes you got to swallow a little bit of it and move on, because you don't want to escalate the situation. You want to de-escalate the situation. And if that means war, revolution, pain, and suffering, you definitely want to de-escalate the situation. But we are in a monolithic struggle. There's supposed to be a RICO lawsuit going out from a former FBI agent, I believe, saying that the level of complexity of what's going on in the political process is supported by this anti-racketeer law. And by starting court processes and that, they have a means of holding some of these people down and actually stripping them of their assets who take it too far. Of course, the big part of it is these people are into child trafficking. That's, a major sideline to alternative news is the child trafficking. And a lot of the official agencies in the United States aren't looking into that. Even though a lot of these people are caught, named, identified, it's all kind of like swept under the rug. And it's not something that's really being done. Or there's levels of complexity where maybe one law enforcement agency may go so far, but then they run into a brick wall with another one. Wiener's laptop, should have been exposed on public TV so that you'd know what's going on. But the propaganda war is going on. They had that thing with Trump, they put him on Time magazine, they make up a photo. The propaganda photos are still there. It's the dark ages and that stuff. And people still fall for this stuff because it inflates whatever bubble you've got. So they put him, there's a little crying kid that had absolutely nothing to do with the context of what they were talking about, that they separated kids. Well, the former ICE director, because he retired, I should say, he made it quite plain. When you're arrested, everybody's separated, okay? Because they take your kids away. And that just goes with the flow. They take your pets too, and they're put into some kind of protective custody. Because they just can't leave them there alone, and they're not going to puck them off to jail or something like that. So, that's just a common factor. And it's like he said, with American citizens, you're busted. Your kids are going to some kind of child welfare organization until they sort it out. So they're busted, and now this is it's a big crisis. Well, there's other big crises. I was reading in the National Socialist Post that what happens to these Yazidi families? They're separated from their children. We promised we were going to help them and look after them and give them arms, protect them from the Islamic terrorists known as ISIS. But ISIS is our army anyway. And it turns out that was just noise. They got nothing. And when they were separated from their children, they were separated from their children. They're never going to see them again. And that these guys are openly selling women as slaves. So some of the people who got away come to Canada, and a guy who's selling women for slaves is here in Canada. That was a good episode of a similar type of crime in that old TV show The Border as well. That the war criminal just happens to be coming into Canada with his way paved. Excuse me? What did you bring in for Justin? Why is this guy here? How come we're not helping these Yazidis? Well, obviously because they're Christian. You can't help that. They have to go after them. But this is just unbelievable. Maybe it's because people are just so naive. I guess you got to go through a war really to begin to even comprehend how evil people can be, the lowest common denominator. In international relations, they're going after the Ruskies again for this Novichok poisoning. They said another couple got poisoned. And, they got a video out of one of the people. I don't know if I can pull up a picture quickly enough for Comrade Hugh here. I think this one's near the top. There we go. Poisoned. That should be a breakfast cereal for Russians, Novichok. So, here's the lady. She's supposed to have this poison. She goes into the supermarket. They say, well, she brushed past a child. This is a highly toxic chemical weapon. Policeman's guarding the scene. He's smiling, right? In the background, there's that invisible cloud and Novichok's going to come and get you. He's not the slightest bit concerned because it's like they're making it up. And there she is, posing with her legs open or something. They couldn't find a better picture. The crime scene, that this stuff's all over the place. The Ruskies did it. The Ruskies did it. The Ruskies did it. It's a broken record. And Porton Down is just down the street. Well, who did the poisoning? Where did the stuff come from? And I don't think, as I understand from the previous poisoning, it was shellfish poisoning. It had nothing to do with a chemical agent used for biological warfare. That stuff is so dangerous that, the slightest smell of it is going to take you down before you even get close. I know that old TV show, The Champions, I put a last episode up of that one. And some developing totalitarian country has a secret island where they're making a chemical weapon to give to us. And you just get even close to it, you're dead on the ground. That's the reality of it. The British Air Force is bombing Syrian positions. So we're still fighting this stupid war that shouldn't even be fought in the first place. That's the disease, is our greedy bankers and industries going into Syria to try to take control of the oil, the pipelines, the government, the bank, and that's the disease. And then people wouldn't have to leave that country if we just left them the hell alone. What else we got here? They have this OPCW has come up with a plan that they can assign blame and retaliate to who they think used a chemical weapon. And they always think Syria did it. Well, we know Syria didn't do it. Basically, that gives them a rubber stamp to bomb the Syrian military after our guys release some kind of chemical weapon that we can blame on the Syrians. And then, how long are you going to do that before Vladimir goes again and talks to his people to say, like Einstein said, right? The next war asks when you'll be fighting with sticks and stones. How hard are we going to push them? Russia's expanding their fleet in the Sea of Azov to 40 ships. The Ukrainians are getting into tank drills. It's not a good time over there. Russia's been stopping ships going into the Ukraine. So the blockade is technically like an act of war. And where's this going to end? I'd hate to see. Russia, Belarus, and Serbia, the comrades of days gone by, are doing maneuvers and drills together as well. It's a dangerous time that we live in. And some of the things that just, blow me away. I came across an old video I saw a couple of years ago about the black goo. And there's an implication that the Falklands War was fought over this substance, which is thought to be alien. And the fellow who talks about it is a physics professor, and he doesn't pull any punches about this, and neither does this posting in this article. I don't have time to play the videos, but a guy named Max Spears, I have one of his interviews on the website, heresy-cafe.com, so you can listen to him talk about it. And I also have the professor's interview from before buried in there as well, with a link at Max's thing. But they killed Max. And what did Max do? When he died, he coughed up 2 liters of black crap, which could be blood from some kind of injury they gave him. But he gets into the fact that, this substance controls your body, controls your life, controls the way things work. This may be the thing that the deep state is loyal to, some sort of alien invader that thrives off us killing each other and being violent. That's my favorite Star Trek episodes, with that light thing that makes everybody fight and go crazy. And the only way to turn it off, the only way to stop giving it power, is to do some of those classical things like each other, respect each other, forgive each other, and just not getting caught up in this escalating violence. And we turn the black goo off, and we don't have to wear it anymore. So I can't wait to watch this documentary about the death of Max Spears, because I think they took him out. Anybody talks like he does. And he's very eloquent. He may have had a drug problem, but he's very eloquent. And I found a lot of people who have substance abuse problems, whether they drink too much or something like that, have a very deep felt sense of honor and responsibility that my dad used to call heart. Very different from a lot of other people. And I guess it's the pain of having that empathy for other people that gets them weighed down with the substance abuse. But instead of having a drug war, it's a health problem. And if we figure that out, there's probably not going to be too many shootings in the street, because it was a rather peaceful kingdom when I was younger, as I remember it. And I think Comrade Hugh didn't have to duck for cover too often walking down the street. But there's a lot of people I know that have been in the shadows of this stuff, where people are shot to death, close to you, or, under your window at work and something like that. So, you're only a couple of steps removed from it happening to yourself. And hopefully we'll wake up these suckers in Ottawa and Toronto and the rest of the world and get them to see what the disease is and how to properly treat it, as opposed to just keep flatulating about the symptoms, because that'll never get us anywhere. And you arrest 100 duck hunters in northern Saskatchewan ain't going to make a crap bit of difference about downtown Toronto and the gang war with their new gun laws. Anyway, we're reaching the end of the